wrong, because my life has not always looked like this. Genuinely, I think I've mentioned about my weight loss journey. I've been on a huge self-discovery journey in the last kind of 7 years. I used to have a very healthy cocaine habit, probably 2 or 3 times a week. The environment I worked in, coke was massive, so consequently I was doing it, I was drinking too much. Cannot tell you the amount of times I don't remember getting home, illegal taxis, you know, waking up probably in random men's beds, you know, genuinely was not in a very positive place in my life. I was in a dead-end job. I'd been there 12 years. I was too scared to move, but you get stuck in a rut, you don't know what to do. And then a very pivotal thing happened in my life which almost forced me to move. I've had a history of depression in my female side of my family, so my grandmother had bipolar, my mum suffered with very bad depression postnatally with me and my sister, didn't know that. And then in my late 20s she really went downhill, you know, was a shell of a woman, I did not recognise her. And in my late 20s I got a phone call at work, and it was my dad, and it was my dad saying, your mum's gone missing. And I was like, Dad, what do you mean your mum's gone missing? Well, she went to her best friend's house, who lives kind of like a 20-minute walk, but she's never showed up. Okay, Dad, say that again, what do you mean? She was like, well, she's not showed up. Well, have you been to look for her? No, I don't want to leave the house. So, you know, I wanted to kill my dad and bring my dad's neck. But I got in the car, my boyfriend at the time, hindsight is an amazing thing, my boyfriend at the time was a paramedic. And my boyfriend and I, he didn't want to leave the house, I remember it distinctly because it was his day off, and he was like, what, are you joking? And I was like, just get in the car now. So we got in the car, we picked up my sister, who was at work, and we drove the hour from London to where my parents live in Tolworth, and got into my living room, and there was a policeman in my living room. And the policeman was saying, you know, has your mother ever done anything like this before? Has she disappeared? Has she tried to take her own life? At which point I said, no, she's never done anything like that. To which my dad said, well, yes, she has. And it was like somebody hit me over the head because I didn't know any of this. So without going into too much melodrama, we then proceeded to go and look for my mum. And at the back of where my parents live, there are woods. And this is kind of, gets a bit more woo-woo here, but this is how I know that I'm kind of divinely guided, and I knew where to go, I knew where to find my mother. So at one point you can turn left into the woods, or you can turn right. And I remember my sister saying to me, well, where do we go? You know, how are we going to find her? And everything in my being just said, turn right. Turn right, turn right. My sister saying, why are we turning right? I said, I don't know, we turn right. So I turned right, and then from there we found her. She'd taken an overdose, she'd slumped, she'd very lucky that she hadn't fallen into the river. But I remember saying at that point, when I was running to get the ambulance, I will do anything, just help me. I smoked at that time, I remember my chest was tight, it was horrible, I was overweight, as I said, I was drinking too much. I just said, I'm going to change, please help me, you know, get my mother out of this situation. And that incident in my life really had a dramatic effect, and I knew that I needed to change my ways, what I was doing, who I was as a person, and I needed to make a difference on this planet. So from that point onwards, I started to take responsibility. And I think that's one of the things I really want to get across to you guys is, you know, life doesn't happen to us. You know, we are the focal point of life. And as soon as we start to actually realise that we are the ones that make a difference and we have an impact and control over everything, everything can shift. So, I have developed like a little abundant philosophy. So what I've realised is over the course of the last 7 years, there are things that I've implemented into my life that have made a difference. And a bit like Penny, Penny's got her process. Abundant to me is a process. So each letter stands for different things. And as I said, we're going to do a workshop together, which you guys are more than welcome to come to. But I'm just going to take you through a couple of the steps of this process, because what I genuinely really want to do is stop people having to get to the point that I got to. You know, if I can kind of give you a bit of advice that stops you going down and doing something that I did, then that's, you know, really, I really feel like I've made a difference. So I'm just going to take you through the philosophy very quickly. So abundant, every letter stands for something different. So A, for example, is appreciation, which I'm going to come back to because we're going to do a little exercise around that. B is being ourselves, because quite often, you know, we can be somebody at work, we can be somebody at home. We have these different masks, you know, we don't necessarily show ourselves to people. U is understanding the world. You know, when that happened with my mum, I actually decided I'm going to educate myself, but educate myself in a different way. So I started listening to Jack Canfield. You know, I started listening to all these positive mental tapes. You know, there's people like Tony Robbins out there. If you haven't listened to them, you know, you can download them on iTunes. Download them, plug yourself in on the way to work, and every morning you get this shot of positivity, which will start to make a difference. You know, we are surrounded by negative images in the newspaper. We are surrounded by negativity everywhere. You only have to put on the TV in the morning about someone being shot, raped. You know, what a way to start your day. You know, I encourage you to get rid of all that shit, cut it out, and actually just start to listen to positive things, have positive friends, and positive relationships. Okay, so that's U. N is nutrition, because that's been a big one on my list. You know, we are what we eat. It's so important what we put in our bodies, as you well know, you ladies. Water, water, water. We are 80% water, so what we think definitely radiates through our bodies. And then D is designing your life, which we're going to touch on now. You know, it's be conscious of who you want in your life, you know, what you want your career to look like, what you want your love life to look like, you know, how many times do you want to go on holiday a year. A is action. So we can't just sit there talking to our friends, we've got to actually take some steps forward. And I encourage you just to take little steps. You know, you don't climb a mountain all in one go, you just have to keep moving forward. So, you know, even if it's every day, write down one thing you're going to do which is positive, which is going to start to make a difference. N we've kind of covered, which is networks, but yeah, massive believer in networking. And I also believe people come into your life at the right time, at the right reason, and I'm sure all of you can agree with that, you know, knowing Sharon and Lawrence. Just when you get to that breaking point and you just can't think you can go any